You won't believe what just happened in court today. Tiffany Henyard, once celebrated as the super mayor of Dalton, just faced what might be the most humiliating moment of her entire career. Cameras were rolling. The courtroom was packed, wall to wall, and just as the judge finished reading the verdict, Henyard stormed out in a dramatic exit. It was like a scene straight out of a political thriller. Gasps, hushed whispers, and the undeniable scent of scandal hanging in the air. But what exactly pushed her to this explosive public meltdown? Was it the avalanche of corruption allegations finally crashing down on her? The shocking financial secrets that had just been exposed for the world to see? Or was it something even more personal? The betrayal of those she once considered loyal allies. For months, Mayor Henyard had brushed off accusations of reckless spending, shady backdoor deals, and a thirst for absolute power. But today, everything came crashing down in spectacular fashion. And her exit? Anything but graceful. Picture this: furious stomping, heated whispers, and a courtroom left in stunned silence. So, what exactly unfolded behind those courtroom doors? What did the judge say that shattered Tiffany Henyard's composure so publicly? And more importantly, is this the beginning of the end for Dalton's most controversial mayor? The courtroom was electric, buzzing with anticipation as reporters, political experts, and everyday citizens crammed into every available seat, eager to witness a defining moment in Henyard's political career. This wasn't just another trial. It was a reckoning for a politician who had made headlines for all the wrong reasons. When Henyard stepped inside, the fiery confidence she once flaunted seemed to have vanished. The flashy press conferences, the designer outfits, the smug attitude, it was all gone. This was a different Tiffany Henyard, one who had been cornered, desperately clinging to control as the situation spiraled beyond her reach. As the judge took his seat, a tense silence filled the room. Cameras clicked, pens scribbled against notepads, and social media feeds exploded with speculation. The evidence against Henyard had been stacking up for months. Accusations of corruption, misuse of taxpayer money, and unchecked abuse of power were no longer quiet whispers. They were loud, undeniable truths demanding justice. First, Henyard put on a calm front, as if she still believed this was all some politically motivated attack. But the moment the prosecutor started breaking down the accusations, her demeanor shifted. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead. She fidgeted in her chair. The confidence she once wore like armor began to crack. A quick glance at her legal team told her everything she needed to know. They saw it coming, and they knew exactly how bad it was about to get. The prosecutor wasted no time cutting straight to the point. "Let's talk about the $43,000 Amazon shopping spree," he began, before launching into a long list of jaw-dropping expenses: first-class flights, extravagant purchases, and luxury hotels. Taxpayer-funded billboards with her face plastered all over town. Each revelation hit harder than the last, the weight of her alleged wrongdoings becoming impossible to ignore. Henyard sat motionless, but her expression betrayed the internal battle she was fighting to keep her composure. The jury, every day, citizens, some of whom had once believed in her promises, watched her closely. Some had looks of pure disgust, others disappointment. This was a woman who had campaigned as a champion of the people, yet the evidence presented by the prosecution painted a very different picture. Then came the bombshell. The prosecutor unveiled a damning new piece of evidence: documents directly linking Henyard to a series of secret backdoor deals. Deals that funneled public funds into private accounts. Screenshots of emails, wire transfers, and confidential agreements flashed across the courtroom screen, sending shockwaves through the crowd. Even some of Henyard's most loyal supporters looked visibly shaken by the revelations. As whispers rippled through the room, her legal team scrambled to respond. But the damage was already done. It was clear to everyone present. Henyard's carefully crafted image as a fearless, untouchable leader was crumbling before their very eyes. The judge's voice cut through the chaos. "Order in the court," he commanded firmly. The murmurs died down, but the truth was out. The defense pushed back, attempting to paint Henyard as the victim of a politically motivated takedown. They argued that the evidence was misleading, taken out of context, just another scheme to tear down a powerful woman in leadership. But their argument fell flat. The evidence was overwhelming, the accusations too detailed, too damning to ignore. The prosecutor pressed on, painting a damning portrait of a leader who had drained the town's resources to fund her lavish lifestyle. While the people of Dalton struggled with failing public services, rising taxes, and neglected infrastructure, Henyard had been living large, on their dime. The betrayal cut deep. The outrage in the courtroom was undeniable. Then came the final blow. A former insider from Henyard's own administration took the stand. Once a trusted ally, they had now turned against her, delivering shocking testimony. They laid bare the corruption, the threats against whistleblowers, the fear that ruled within her administration. What had started as a political scandal now looked like the collapse of an empire built on intimidation and deception. As the judge called for a recess, giving both sides a chance to regroup, Henyard shot up from her seat. Her hands gripped the table, her face flushed with a mix of fury and desperation. Her lawyers leaned in, whispering urgently, pleading with her to stay calm. But Henyard was never one to back down quietly. She had built her career by dominating every room, making herself the center of attention. And in true Tiffany Henyard fashion, she snapped. Just as the judge rose to leave, Henyard bolted upright. "This is a setup. These are all lies. You just can't handle a strong black woman in power," she shouted, her voice echoing through the courtroom. Chaos erupted. Reporters rushed to capture the moment, their cameras flashing in a frenzy. The jury exchanged uneasy glances, while the prosecution stood still, arms crossed, silently watching her unravel. Her outburst was the final nail in the coffin. Security moved in, urging her to calm down, but Henyard wasn't done. "You'll all regret this. You think I'm going down? I'm not going anywhere," she yelled as she stormed toward the exit. But just as she reached the door, she stopped in her tracks. Federal agents, who had been sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom, now stepped forward, blocking her path. For the first time, real fear flickered across Henyard's face. The BV lead agent held up a document. "Tiffany Henyard, we need you to come with us." Silence. Even her most devoted supporters were left speechless. Henyard, who once commanded every room she entered, now stood, frozen in place, trapped by the very system she believed she could outmaneuver. Her lawyers sprang into action, whispering frantically as they attempted to negotiate with the agents. But it was clear, Tiffany Henyard had no escape. Her bold facade cracked as the weight of reality settled in. Federal agents surrounded her, guiding her out of the courtroom while cameras documented every second of her very public downfall. As she walked through the courthouse halls, she held her head high, masking the humiliation beneath a forced confidence. Every step echoed with the weight of her crumbling political empire. What had started as a day of speculation had transformed into a defining moment. Not just for Tiffany Henyard, but for the entire town of Dalton. Her once inspiring tale of ambition and influence had spiraled into a grim warning. A story of corruption, deception, and the downfall of a leader who thought she was untouchable. This wasn't part of the plan. She had braced herself for a rough day. Bad press, maybe even a difficult ruling. But not this. Not federal agents waiting for her with stacks of official-looking documents. Her lawyers moved fast, stepping between her and the agents, whispering urgently. "We need to leave. Now. Say nothing," one of them muttered, trying to contain the situation. But Tiffany Henyard never backed down. Clenching her fists, she squared her shoulders and locked eyes with the lead agent. "This is harassment, political persecution," she snapped, her voice cutting through the hushed courtroom. The agents, unfazed by her outburst, remained calm. "Ms. Henyard, we need you to come with us for questioning. This is not an arrest, yet." That single word, "yet," sent a chill through her. Her mind raced. The judge hadn't even ruled, so why were federal agents here? She knew there had been investigations, but she had been assured they wouldn't lead to anything. She had allies, connections, people who were supposed to protect her. Yet here they were, multiple federal agencies standing in her way. Courtroom reporters scrambled to capture the moment, their cameras flashing as social media erupted. Within minutes, hashtags like Wardy Henyard Meltdown and Yak Shanborian dominated the trending lists. Her once loyal supporters had mixed reactions, some shouting in her defense, calling this a setup, while others silently slipped away, their faith in her shaken. Tiffany Henyard, once a powerhouse, was beginning to look more like a liability than a leader. Her lawyer pulled at her sleeve, urging her forward. Jaw clenched, eyes blazing, Tiffany stormed ahead, agents flanking her as she pushed through the courtroom doors. The walk through the courthouse halls felt like a slow-motion nightmare. Every step heavier than the last. Cameras followed her every move, while news anchors narrated her downfall as if it were the climax of a Hollywood thriller. She walked in expecting a victory, one remarked, but she's leaving under federal scrutiny. This could be the beginning of the end for Tiffany Henyard. Outside, reporters were relentless. "Tiffany, do you have a statement? Is it true the FBI has a case against you? Are you planning to resign?" Her face tensed with irritation, but she refused to respond. She knew better than to give them another headline. Damage control was already underway. But by the time she was ushered into the federal building, the narrative was slipping from her grasp. Her PR team rushed to spin the story, releasing statements calling this a political witch hunt, an attempt to silence a strong leader. But the leaks coming from inside the investigation painted a darker picture. Allegations of threats, financial mismanagement, offshore accounts. And then, the real bombshell dropped. Within hours, a leaked audio recording surfaced online. The voice on the tape? Allegedly, Tiffany Henyard, discussing ways to destroy her opponents. The leaked recording was unmistakable. Her voice, clear and dripping with arrogance, sneered, "They won't dare speak against me. And if they do, we'll make sure they regret it." Within minutes, the clip went viral, igniting a social media storm. Memes flooded in, comparing Tiffany Henyard to history's most corrupt politicians, while hashtags like Henyard Exposed and Justice for City dominated global trends. As the internet reveled in the scandal, Tiffany's once loyal inner circle spiraled into free fall. Her team scrambled to discredit the recording, insisting it had been doctored, but the damage was already done. Even her most devoted supporters began to withdraw, unwilling to go down with her sinking ship. News outlets that had once painted her in a favorable light abruptly shifted their tone. "The walls are closing in on Tiffany Henyard," a primetime anchor declared, and inside a stark federal interrogation room, Tiffany, sitting stiffly with her arms crossed, was finally beginning to crack. The lead investigator, calm and methodical, flipped through a thick folder filled with damning evidence. Bank statements, wire transfers, and incriminating emails, each pointing to deep-rooted corruption. Tiffany scoffed, forcing out a laugh. "You have nothing on me," she said, her voice carrying forced confidence. But that confidence wavered the moment a bank statement was slid across the table. An unusually large deposit from a shell company, linked to a government contract. Then came an email exchange discussing illicit favors for donors, followed by a signed document flagged as suspicious. Her bravado faltered, her grip on the situation slipping. The investigator leaned in. "You can keep pretending," they said, their voice calm yet firm, "or you can start talking, because right now we have enough to take this all the way." For the first time that day, Tiffany had no snarky retort. Silence filled the room. Outside, the world had already moved on to the next phase of the scandal, the fallout spreading like wildfire. News headlines blared updates on Tiffany's federal questioning, with political analysts dissecting every revelation, speculating on just how deep the corruption ran. Some suggested she could be looking at serious prison time. The city council wasted no time calling an emergency session, one streamed live to the public, where once loyal trustees turned on her in real time. "This administration has failed our city," one declared. "We can no longer stand by while taxpayer money is squandered." Outside City Hall, protests erupted, furious citizens demanding justice. Tiffany Henyard, who had once wielded immense power, now found herself abandoned by those who once championed her. But she wasn't about to go down without a fight. In a last-ditch effort to control the narrative, Tiffany released a video statement, dismissing the scandal as a politically motivated attack. Her voice was steady, her expression unwavering. But the public wasn't buying it. Within minutes, social media comments poured in, demanding her resignation. But rather than retreat, Tiffany doubled down, calling a press conference where she lashed out at the media and her political enemies. "They want to silence me," she shouted. But the reporters weren't letting her off easy. "Ms. Henyard, can you explain the bank records? Do you deny the recordings?" The questions came rapid fire, but she dodged them all. It was clear. The tide had turned, and this time not even Tiffany's defiance could save her. Then came the final, crushing blow. Late that night, FBI agents stormed her home and office, seizing documents and computers as part of their ongoing investigation. And then, the moment that would define her downfall, Tiffany Henyard, once a commanding force in politics, was led away in handcuffs. The image of her arrest spread like wildfire, the mugshot of a disgraced leader who had once believed herself untouchable. Charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, she now faced the possibility of over 20 years behind bars. By morning, the world had already moved on. Political allies who had once stood proudly by her side released statements condemning corruption and praising the justice system. Investigators hinted that more officials connected to Tiffany were now under scrutiny. The city was preparing for new leadership. But even from behind bars, Tiffany Henyard wasn't done. She released one final statement. "This is far from over. The truth will come out." Was it an empty threat? Or did she still have one last trick up her sleeve? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The reign of Tiffany Henyard had come to a spectacular end. So, what do you think? Is this the final chapter for Tiffany Henyard, or is there more to this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to stay ahead of the curve on every scandal, make sure to hit subscribe. This story, it's far from over.